This season of Shaped is brought to you by Gillette Labs, helping you look and feel your best with an unbeatable, smooth, clean shave. Available now at Chemist Warehouse.
So they said goodbye and I went up, and sure enough, I walked in and she was lying on the tiles, and I rang 000.
John Noel William Newman,
Yeah.
but mostly known as Sam or John Sammy Newman.
Well, Sam, yep.
Can you take me through where Sam comes from?
Yeah, I can. When I started playing for Geelong, I started in 1963 at the end of the home and away season. I was playing at school, and I played the last 3 games in the reserves in order to be eligible to play in the reserves grand final while I was at school. And then I left school. In 1964, I started proper at Geelong, and my first coach, Bob Davis, we used to watch a show, as most people did in those days, called the Jackie Gleason Show. And Jackie Gleason had an orchestra leader called Sammy Spear. And Jackie Gleason would say, after he did his monologue, he'd say, "A little bit of travelling music, Sam, and away we go." And I said that to Bob one day when I came into training, and he said, "A little bit of travelling music, Sam, and away we go out to training." And from that day on, I know it sounds pathetic, from that day on I was called Sam.
Well, there you go. Well, I don't know how much you know about our podcast Shaped, and it's very much around, you've lived a journey, a fruitful life, but I'm sure there's been plenty of ups and downs along the way.
Yep.
And I suppose our purpose is to kind of understand those moments in time that have been defining or have shaped you in some way, shape, or another, whether that be through family, career, football, injury, as we can see, and relationships, because so many of our experiences through life actually formulate who we are or a guiding light in who we are becoming as we progress. And I want to start off by saying a big thank you, because I don't know if you know this, but at some stage during my career, you opened up the Footy Show one night and spoke to the man in the arena from Roosevelt, the quote.
Yes.
And it was in support of my wife and I, and that she'd gone out there and supported me for a bit of flack that I was copying in the media.
Yes.
So I just wanted to start it off
It's
by
not
saying,
the critic who counts,
exactly
not the man
right.
who points out how the strong man stumbles. Mm-hmm.
Very true. So thank you.
Well, yeah, I don't do things gratuitously. I tend to be reasonably honest with my opinions, and tend to try and be not who I am, but if you try and fake who you are. So if I thought you deserved that, I remember sticking up for James Hird with the Essendon saga, not because he's a friend of mine or anything. I thought, how disgraceful is all what's going on at that club, and who's getting blamed for what, and without any evidence at all. I thought, so I'm glad I did it if I thought you deserved it.
You spoke of, you went to Geelong Grammar,
Yep.
and somewhere where we like to start is childhood.
Yeah.
What was life like for John Sammy Newman growing up? I mean, your dad, I think he was a teacher.
Yeah, he was.
Mum?
She was a housewife.
And an amazing one?
Well, she was just the standard housewife back in the 40s when I was born. I had a fairly privileged life, no point saying I didn't.
Yeah.
I was not born into wealth, but I was born into having the benefit of a privileged education.
Yep.
Wasn't a great scholar, but spent all my life at that school. And then because I was good at football, had a fairly privileged life playing professional football for Geelong, and that led to an opening to having a fairly privileged life, having a television and radio and media experience. So much so that when I finished, I had a fairly privileged life, not having to get up at 9 o'clock and go and do a job till 5 o'clock and then ply my way home in the traffic. So I've had a fairly privileged life, but it hasn't been without its ups and downs, Trent, because in order to experience the highs in life, you've got to have been down to the depths. That's how you quantify your life.
Absolutely. Well, I'm looking forward to getting into some of those depths
Ooh.
as we progress. You have said on a couple of occasions that your dad was the greatest critic, but he was also your greatest inspiration. What do you mean by that?
Well, my father was a no-nonsense person, very strict as in principled and ethics and morals-wise, which in the latter years of his life I must have almost made him wonder, actually, was I his son? But I had plenty of discussions with him about what I do and what I've done. But so I looked up to him and my mother. But the greatest inspiration in my life, when besides my parents, was a man I played football with, who I idolised, both football-wise and just as a person, and that was the great Graham Polly Farmer. He was a mentor of mine, not because he took me aside and showed me anything about life, but I watched how he handled life, an Indigenous man who made good, didn't whinge about who he was or what's going on in the world, and just got on with it. And that's what I admired about him.
Well, speaking of your footy career, I know that he kind of did take you under his wing with regards to rucking and so forth.
Yes.
Back in those days.
Yes.
And I hate saying that.
Yeah, that's good. They're back in those days.
You were 189 centimetres,
6'3", just,
6'4",
yeah, 6'3", yep.
That's pretty undersized for a ruckman, but you played over 300 games at the top level.
Yeah, missed 100 through injury.
Well, speaking of injury, the kidney injury that forced you to miss playing in a
grand final, yep.
What was that like from an experience point of view? Because there's obviously the disappointment of missing out on why we play the game, but also you were pretty close to losing your life. Is that correct?
Well, it sounds a bit hokey, doesn't it? It sounds a bit dramatic, but seeing as I'm here, much to the chagrin of most people who know me, they thought it'd be good if I wasn't here. No, I'd had my blood supply replaced twice because I'd been left on a stretcher, having been taken off the ground in the rooms in 1967. And my father came in to see how I was, and I said I needed to go to the urinal, and he helped me in there, and I just urinated pure blood. And so then that got their attention. So then they bundled me into the ambulance, and I was still in my football gear. So they removed my socks and jumper and shorts in the ambulance on the way into the Alfred Hospital. And my mother, I think I remember her saying as I was taken into the operating, "How is he?" And the doctor said it'll be touch and go, just because I'd lost so much blood. And so here we are, sitting here.
You came through the other side?
Came through the other side. But
you played a lot of footy beyond that significant injury.
Yeah.
Subconsciously, did you change the way you played?
A little.
Missing a bit of your kidney.
You had to
wear a guard.
I did to start with because, now if it happened today, no one would be allowed to point out if you were playing against them, "I'm going to get you. I'm going to knee you in the side. Watch out. I'm going to try and make you hurt." If you said that today, you'd be not only sanctioned or suspended, you might be taken to court for hate speech or something in this world we live in. But I had plenty of my opponents would say all those things. And so I started to play people on my left-hand side because I lost my right kidney, and I tried to keep them away from that side. So I did change the way I played. Absolutely.
You had an amazing career. All-Australian, a couple of best and fairest. You're a Geelong Hall of Famer. You're an AFL Hall of Famer. You're Geelong Team of the Century. You even captained the Cats.
Yeah.
I missed anything? You'd have a pretty good...
No.
You've always come across like a very humble kind of person. Like, did you have an ethos when you were playing of how you got the best out of yourself?
Do you like people who tell you or insist that you know how good they are, or do you just like to work it out yourself? I get often asked a lot, did I think I was a good footballer? I said, Don't ask me, mate. You ask people who played with and against me, and I'm not about to tell you who I am. You work it out yourself.
I think it's a fantastic attitude to have. When you came to the decision to retire in 1980,
Yep.
was that an easy one for you, or was it something you had to wrestle with?
No, pretty easy because as I say, I played for exactly the same time as Kevin Bartlett, and I played 100 games less than him. I missed 5 years of football through injury. Just every single injury you could mention I've had. What was
the worst one? Outside
probably
of the kidney. Outside of the kidney.
Well, I got punched in the head by who punched me in the head? That scar there. I think Jeff Murray from Hawthorn punched me in the head, and I got a detached retina, so I had that fixed. I've had a broken leg and jaw and ribs, and I've got knocked out several times in either accidentally or on purpose in the course of playing football. Days gone by. Don't think it should be part of today's game, but you might ask me about today's game. You probably won't want to ask me about today's game. But there's a duty of care when you play a contact sport without having the authorities try and nail the actual game down so that you are not playing a contact sport.
And that is your opinion of the game today?
Absolutely. No, it's if you enjoy the game, not you, if everyone enjoys the game, per capita of the population, it's the most populated and popular sport in the world per capita.
Yep.
And that's good, and that's how it should be. But it's a far cry from what it was and what it should be. If you can say, Trent, that you watch games today and you think, shit, or you say, sugar.
You can say whatever you want on here.
Yeah, you say, man, what a great game this is. They're exciting because they're close. If you can say, wow, that's how our game should be played, I'll defy anyone to say that. Anyone.
Do you think the way that control has come into the game has taken some of the X factor out of it?
Yeah, or lack of control. The umpiring is disgraceful. Now, having said that, this is not a reflection on the umpires.
No.
This is never blame the people who work for you. Blame the people who employ you. The umpiring is incomprehensible. It is, and they think, oh, well, what we'll do is we'll keep adding more umpires. We'll get 6 umpires. And in the end, we'll have 1 umpire for everyone that plays. And we'll all try and give decisions just to make our job relevant. And no one has any idea what's going on with the rules, the interpretations. There's so many anomalies about a game. Why have you got a goal square? Why have you got a line across the circle? Why have you got a bigger circle outside the main circle? Why have you got a square around the ground? Why are those things there? They were all designed to make the game better, but no one takes any notice of them anymore. Why is there a line across the circle? Why was it put there?
So the ruckmen don't cross over?
Yes, well, exactly. So they
jump into each other.
Oh, they jump up in the air for the ball. They don't spear through the air and try and maim someone. That's why they put a outer circle in, so you had to start inside the outer circle, so you couldn't get enough speed up to run at someone. You had to jump into the air. And the reason there was a line there is so you don't touch someone before you jump for the ball. Now, as soon as it's bounced, they walk across the line, hang on to one another. We were told when we played football at a boundary throw-in, you were not allowed to hang on to people or wrestle with them or jostle. You had to jump for the ball. You look at games gone by in yesteryear, and people who in a boundary throw-in, you'd have one person come in and another, and they'd jump and try and hit the ball. Now they just, as soon as, even before the boundary umpire gets a thing in his hands, they push and jostle, and the umpires stand there and you watch it and you think, what sort of spectacle is this? How bad does this look? Rolling scrums of people. not game to really hit anyone that hard in case they get a free kick, not game to tackle anyone. The hand passing is just nonsensical. The chipping around the back of the... But it's nonsensical. You look up the ground and you think there's people up there in the same coloured jumper as the person who has the ball and they will not kick it down to him. And you think, well, they might be one or two out. Well, that's the coaching. Have a couple of people down the end there that might be able to get the thing. Never forget, a backman has to second guess what a forward does, so forward's got the jump. If that couldn't be apparent to the person kicking the ball, maybe I'll have a plan worked out. If I get the ball, you lead out that way.
So do you watch much footy now?
Yeah, I watch. Well, I watch a bit now because I do a podcast myself with Wayne Carey. And he says if you watch the football, because we primarily talk about football, I feel I should be up with it, but I start to watch it and then I turn it off. And then I'll come back to it to watch the score, and I think, I wonder if it's improved, and it never does. The amount of games that are enjoyable to watch, I haven't found one this year.
Wow.
Well, so what do you call an enjoyable game? A close game? One with the skill? How many skills are portrayed by the players these days on a regular basis? Do you see many high marks? Do you see many good shots for goal? Do you see many good tackles? Do you see many one-on-one battles? Do you see...
Not enough would be my answer.
Yeah, not nearly enough.
And I think that everyone would agree that that's what they want to see.
Yes, but no one says it. None of the commentators do because they're so shit scared that the sponsors will say, oh, don't talk down our game. I used to do this on the Footy Show I was on, and they say, don't run the game down. I said, well, don't show clips that warrant running the game down.
Speaking of your media career, you obviously were in it for a long time.
Yeah.
You were never backward in coming forward with your opinion. You were willing to put yourself out there. You said before that you made a comment and it kind of has sat with me.
Resonated with you?
Well, it was around, you were saying around your kidney injury,
yep.
Maybe there'd be a lot of people that wished you didn't make it.
Yeah. Throwaway line.
Why? Why is that though?
Oh, because I'm polarised people. Because...
Do you think there's a lot of people that think the opposite? Like you are someone who was willing to just, I'll just put it out there. And
a lot of people think a lot of people like what I did.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't because I probably say it as it is. So I don't... I don't... if you think I'm rude and abrasive and arrogant and up myself, well, that's okay. But if you criticise, see, I'm the most. If you criticise someone from another gender, another race, another sexual orientation, if you criticise those people, you are automatically pigeonholed as being a sexist, a racist, homophobic, transphobic. And I say, just because you are in one of those categories in society, that doesn't give you the right to be free from being criticised. If you're criticising the person, not who you are or what you are or where you come from or what your race is. But as soon as you go down that route, you are all automatically branded. And that's why, see, I get branded as a racist because I have an opinion about some people from a different race who play football, but I have plenty of people from the same race as me that play football, but no one ever worries about that because they're the same race. I don't know why we have welcome to country. I have no idea why we do that. It's not relevant to 98% of the population. Good on us. We want to be united and we want to be one people. I have no idea why we have a group of people come out in bearskins and look at us and say they want to welcome us to whose country? It's our country. It's our country.
When you are labelled a racist by whoever that is, does it upset you?
Does it upset me? If someone, you might, for the sake of this discussion, you might say, just say you said, well, I think you're a racist. I would say to you, okay, that's fine. Tell me what I have done or said. I could tell you what I've done. Maybe I painted my face black pretending I was Nicky Winmo one day. That got me into a lot of trouble. Maybe that's racist. People say that's racist. Fair enough. I would ask you what I've said that makes you think I'm a racist. I ask people, why do you say I'm a racist? And you say, oh, because you had an opinion. I had an opinion of someone who wasn't of my race. And they say, yes. I said, why is that a racist? Why is it? That's just me having an opinion about an individual, not a race of people. Tell me what else. It's like people who don't like Donald Trump. They say they think he's an arsehole and they think he's a shocker and they hate him. And I said, well, what do you disagree with his policies about? And they say, well, he's an arrogant, sexist pig. And I say, yeah, okay, that's a given. What don't you like about his policies? Do you think people should flood across the border, immigration-wise, have 12 million people just enter the country? Do you think that's good?
Yeah.
Do you think Iran should have a nuclear weapon? Do you think that's good? Do you think that he should try and stop the war between Putin and Zelensky? Do you think that's good? Do you think, you go on, what do you disagree with? And they say that no one can actually tell you what they disagree with. Maybe you can tell me if you're not a Trump fan.
No, I think he's a man that follows through on his word, to be honest.
That's right. And he campaigned on exactly what he's doing and got overwhelmingly elected. And yet people still go on about him saying he's
negative.
Yep.
The transition. We'll talk about business. You're a businessman yourself.
A businessman, hardly, but...
Well, you had a hairdressing supply company.
We did. Yep. Two stumbling footballers, Doug Wade and myself, had a business for a decade.
And it went pretty successfully?
Yeah, that was good. Kept us out of the pubs, kept us...
What were the lessons in that business that helped you with making decisions from an investment point of view as you progressed through life, or was it more around luck?
I haven't made very good in decisions in investment. I backed an employer of mine back in the day and he went broke and I backed him with offering my house as...
this is the transport company?
Yes, the transport company. And he went broke and the bank took my house off me and I didn't go bankrupt, but I was broke.
You literally had not a cent to your name.
Not a cent. In
fact, took your house.
Yep. And I lived behind a friend of mine who's a dental technician. I lived behind his shop in a room for a couple of years.
What does experiences like that?
Yeah.
What does it teach you in the next phase of your life, or in that moment? Do you kind of go, "Fuck, what's the point of living"?
I never got to that stage, but I never got to the stage of thinking, what's the point of living? But I thought, it's like saying, oh, people are brave. They get run over by a car and then you're lying in hospital and they say, oh, isn't he brave? He's lying there and you've got no alternative. Oh, you do have an alternative. You can go down to the beach and pull a wave over your body and wind it up. Or else you think that's not probably a good idea for the people you leave behind. That's just my opinion. People have other views about that. But so you perhaps look back to what made you a good sportsman or footballer, your resolve and your discipline, and you think, well, come on, get yourself out of this. Use some of the things that you think you use to make you a good professional, competitive athlete. Apply them to your private and personal and business life, and pull yourself together.
Was there one key attribute or theme that you focused on to pull yourself out of that rut?
Yes, I'd been successful.
Yep.
Very successful. I've been successful. I didn't like people to think I'd been a failure. I've been a failure at plenty of things, but that's probably my fault. This wasn't my fault directly. It was indirectly, and I didn't like people to think I was a failure. So I thought of a way I could dig myself out of the hole I was in, and that came an opportunity to do some interviews in the Sun in those days before it became the Herald Sun. I did a series of interviews called Head to Head.
Head to Head.
And much like what you're doing now. And I used to transcribe them to a woman who used to sit at the desk, and I used to make sure that she wrote down exactly what the tape said. I didn't take anyone out of context. I didn't dud anyone, and I've never dudded anyone professionally. You love this saying, but your word is your bond. If I say I'll do something or I won't do something, that's it. I'd never deceive or try and convince people to do something against their better judgment. But I used to be upfront. I'd say, this is it. If you say it, I write it down.
Yeah.
And that I did. And so they were very successful. Those interviews got me back on my feet.
And then blossoming TV career comes after that as well.
Well, a TV career, yeah.
Not blossoming?
Yeah, well.
To be in there for so long.
Yeah, no, it was blossoming, but it was blossoming because it was a very popular show invented by Eddie Maguire and the late Ian Johnson and Trevor Marmalade, and they got me along to be, I don't know, probably the buffoon I was. And so it blossomed. It certainly did. It started off very slowly, and then it just became a giant. It did.
Yeah.
But that's because everyone worked for the same interest and goal, and the thing that made it successful was that no one ever tried to take credit or stab anyone in the back. We were actually like a football team. We were a media team. I don't think, from my experience in the media, there's plenty of people who'll jump over the top of you if it can lift their stocks. None of that ever happened at the Footy Show that I saw.
Yeah.
We were, as they say in the industry, generous with everyone. If you want to have a go at it, give you your time, say it, and then someone else will say something.
I appreciate that.
Maybe.
In your time through media, who's the best person you've ever interviewed, and why is that?
Oh, now I've interviewed.
I'm tipping there's been some personalities and characters along that time.
I reckon I've interviewed in the podcast I do and the Herald Sun interviews at least 500 or 600 people. They'd started off just with footballers, and then they were successful. This is in the paper, and we got on to politicians and Australian identities and personalities, and then visiting entertainers and people from overseas. And I've interviewed plenty of people, from pedophiles to bank robbers to murderers to people of interest. I got rounded up. So there's an old saying, thou protesteth too much. I keep protesting about this. I got rounded up for interviewing a neo-Nazi. They jumped on me and they said, why would you give a platform to a neo-Nazi? I said, well, everyone else gives this neo-Nazi a platform. They go along and broadcast on the horrendous things he's done and the antisocial things he's done. I thought I'll interview him and see what makes him tick. Why is he a neo-Nazi? Why does he like Hitler? What does he find enchanting about Hitler? Well, now this was just off limits, and then I got accused of being a Nazi sympathiser, and then I was a white supremacist, and then it just went to the next level, and it keeps going to the next level. Those that people who don't like you in the first place think, we've got him on this. So every time now I'm mentioned, or any interviews they do, they say, Sam Newman, this might be one of them. Sam Newman's doing softer interviews now to try and repair the damage he did by interviewing a neo-Nazi. It's just extraordinary. The dribblers who write all this nonsense. But one thing I do pride myself in, I have a superiority complex when I need it. And I am so superior to those dribblers, those critics who know neither victory or defeat.
Is that what you speak to in your own head when those kind of articles are written, though? Like, because there is people out there that just want to bring others down, and that's just the reality of the world they live in, the life they've chosen to live. You must have either thick skin or some barriers that allow you to continue just to progress to be Sam or John.
Well, thick skin, I don't mind being trolled. Not that I read them, but people read them out to me and tell you what people say about you. I don't mind being trolled by anyone. Who are these people? Who are they, and who are the people who write about you? Why do they say things about you? Because maybe I annoy them for some reason. I got accused of interviewing idiots on the street talk, and they said, it was disgraceful that I go out and speak to people out in the street. Well, if you wanted to be interviewed out in the street, you'd come and speak to us. If you didn't, you wouldn't. I notice people now go out and do vox pops on the street. I saw someone doing it. Some channel had sent 2 people out to interview people on the street. No different questions that I used to ask, no different answers. The people were still gave ridiculous answers and looked stupid, but they weren't. Yeah, that's fine. That's all. That's the public out there. I've spent a lot of time in the public. I said I've had a privileged life. I've been all over. I've seen more of the public than most people have had hot dinners. Most of the public are not long out of the forests. They're tree swingers.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Yeah, it's fantastic. That's the way we are. That's who we are. That's our DNA, this country, which in the middle, since settlement, that's what we've evolved to be.
Now is the time to stock up on all of your Gillette favourites at Chemist Warehouse with 40% off during July. I have absolutely been loving the new and improved Gillette Labs razor. It features flex disc technology that adapts to the contours of your face for next level comfort. It combines Gillette's best blades for an unbelievable smooth shave. Grab yours today at your nearest Chemist Warehouse. Speaking of success, because you would deem, or you've said the word privilege a couple of times, which would mean,
well, I'm being
had opportunities and
self-deprecating.
What does success, or how would you define success now?
Yes.
As compared to what you would have in the early days?
No, that's a good question. Being a survivor, I see people say, you were successful. I say, well, I might have been vaguely successful, but I've been a survivor. I, as I say, started doing this I finished playing in 1980. I was given the opportunity in 1976. I was at an awards night called the Cancellation Awards, and Jack Dyer had a car accident on the way to the function, and the producer, Channel 10, Phil Gibbs, who Channel O it was in those days, he said, I was the captain of Geelong. I was sitting at the front table, and he said, we need someone to fill in for Jack. Could you come up and present an award to someone? I think it was to David Parkin. I was still playing football. And he gave me a sheet that thick about the idiot, what to say and where the camera was and what. And I said, mate, please, you want me to be on in 5 minutes, do you? I said, I can't read all that. So I said, I'll just do it. So I asked David Parkin a couple of questions. Today wouldn't seem too... they'd seem reasonable questions today, a bit edgy.
Yep.
But back in that day, they were really edgy. I wasn't demeaning him or being disrespectful, but he wasn't prepared for the questions. I asked him, I can't even remember what I asked him, I'm not going to ask you who was the best team you played, who was the worst team you played, and you thought, wow, we've got these people by the throat. He said, what? I said, well, do you want me to ask you the Dorothy Dix questions, or let's ask you some questions people might be interested in rather than the standard stock questions? Well done, David. You must be happy. Have you ever heard anyone say, oh, no, I'm not happy, no, from winning a premiership? No. So I asked him a couple of diverse and lateral questions, and after it they said, very interesting, it was good. And then Ron Casey asked me to be on World of Sport. and then Channel 9 asked me to be on Channel 9, and then Eddie started the Footy Show and they asked me to be on that, and that's it. They've asked me, ended up getting cancelled. Oh, yeah, they say I wasn't, but I was. I got sacked. Had an opinion on a podcast about someone, and that didn't go over well with the people who had nothing to do with the show I was on the television. They didn't like what I said about someone because it happened to be a person from another race who what I said was absolutely accurate. And they said that was racist. I said, why? I've said plenty of things about people who aren't of that race. Why is it if I have an opinion about that person, is it racist? Oh, well, it's been perceived as racism. I said, oh, I see. They said, would you mind if would you like to keep going with this Sunday Footy Show? And I said, not if you don't want me to. They said, oh, be good if you said if we parted ways. I said, that's fine. That's absolutely fine, mate. Yeah. Never beg for anything, never.
What has been your greatest strength as a media personality or through life? Is it curiosity? Because it seems as though it's something that, you are willing to ask different questions or left field or find out something different about people that we might know a fair bit about.
Being resilient enough to be confident enough to know if you give an opinion, it's your opinion. And if people disagree with it, I very happy with confrontation, but I go to speak at a lot of functions. Some I get cancelled on when they know I'm going to speak. I would never, ever, I would always I'd always have a discussion with people about what they disagree with what I say and why I say it and how I say it. Would never abuse people necessarily for having a stand against what I do. I'd always ask them to justify why they say it, because half the time it gets blown out of proportion, it gets taken out of context. Very happy to say if it's not taken out of context, but resilience and being honest to yourself and not being intimidated by, is there anyone in the world, I'm talking about, is there anyone in the world that you could have sit here and feel intimidated to interview? Well, let's just say Donald Trump, Zelensky, Putin, any top actor, they get up in the morning, they pull their trousers on or they put their dress or
hope they
clothes
brush their
on.
teeth.
Hey?
You hope they brush their teeth. And
they sit here, they're just people like
human.
you. They got a brain and their profession or vocation is something different to yours. Would you ever be intimidated by anyone you speak to? And why would you be? You wouldn't be. You shouldn't be.
Yeah.
Plenty of people are.
Well, I would.
Would you?
Potentially. More so, it'd be my own insecurities.
But so your own insecurities, because you would probably fear, like I used to, but it didn't worry me because they were well known and they were well known opinions of people. But you would think, oh, I shouldn't ask them this question because they might get some blowback. They might criticise you, and so I'm not answering it. This is the interview. Is this finished? Yeah. It's finished. If you ask me that, I've interviewed plenty of people. John McEnroe I interviewed, who was a fantastic interview, and I was told that he took substances. Was written up in a lot of magazines, and I said, "Did you ever take cocaine while you played tennis?" He said, "I don't wish to answer that." I asked him about the woman he was married to. Was it film star? I can't remember. He said, "I don't wish to." I said, "That's fine. Just thought I'd ask because people would expect me to ask you that."
Yep.
He was a great interview. Just ask questions you think people would like to know the answers to, and hope to God that they'll answer. And if they don't, move on.
Reminds me of Brandon Ellis when he first got to the footy club. He said he asked someone what they earn per year. Just one of the wealthy business people that support the club. And I freaked out. I was like,
"Yep,
you can't ask someone that."
No.
And he said, "Well, if you don't ask, you don't know." And all they can say is, "I'm not willing to share that." So it's a bit like your advice just then.
Well, that's right. I would take not offence, but if if you said to me, what was I earning when I was on the Footy Show, I'd say,
that's none of your business.
well, I wouldn't be as harsh as that. I'd say, why do you want to know that?
Yeah.
And you'd say, well, it's just interesting. I'm just wondering what pecking order. I said, well, do you know what other people earn? Not really. I said, well, then if I told you what I earn, how would you compare it? It's an illogical question.
Yeah, makes sense. You spoke of McEnroe's marriage or wife.
Oh, that was just an example.
You've been married 4 times?
Yep.
Talk to me about relationships and what, through your experiences, what are the most important parts to a successful one or a positive one?
Wow, me giving advice on relationships.
What have you learned from the failed marriages?
So, the 3 people I've been married to, the last person I was married to died.
Yeah.
So I'll probably still be married to her. But I got married when I was in the 60s, and it was almost unheard of to stay with someone or live with someone if you weren't married. So I married that person, get on very well with her. Then things went on, and I went out with this person for 3 or 4 years, and eventually the people you go out with, I found this, say, well, where's this headed? And I say, I don't know, will we get married? So we got married, and then I did that again. And as I say, I wasn't going to get married again, but the woman I went out with, I thought she probably would like me to ask her to marry her, so I did for a birthday present, and I was very happy to do it. And she's no longer, and I don't want to embarrass the person that's sitting next to me over here, but I've found I've become. I don't think I'll ever get married again, because I don't think that person would want to be the 5th Mrs. Newman. But
you didn't answer my question though.
Yeah, what was it?
What did you learn that needs to be part of a relationship?
I'll tell you what I learned.
Yeah,
I'll tell you what I learned. I read a book once, Men Are From Mars and Women Are From Venus. Men are liars and women are schemers. Nothing has ever been more true in the world I've lived in. Men are liars and women are schemers. So men are guided by their sexual orientation and drive, and women are happy to cop all that as long as there's something in it for them. Now, there are exceptions to the rule.
Yes.
But I've been, infidelity has been probably one of my long suits. Like, I've not been monogamous to the people I've been married to. For a while I have been.
Yeah.
But then tends to go off the rails. And then that usually ends. I could have been married 8 times, I reckon. I've been out with people for 2 or 3 years at a time. When you get to 80, you've probably had a lot of long-term relationships. And probably I've learnt after the 3rd one or the 4th one, you think, whoa, just steady down here. I'm not sure that we'll just push ahead with this. Present company excluded.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that.
Well, I'm not sure that I've been very good at sharing that. As I say, fancy getting relationship advice from me.
I'm not asking for advice. It's
pretty
more
good
about
at
the lessons.
Pretty, yeah.
So how do you formulate a strong relationship that doesn't break down based on your experiences?
Well, when the sex is over, when the sex isn't the main driving point of having a relationship, because it usually is with most people, and when that's over, you've got to have something in common with the person that you're with. Usually, you'll love this, trust, but yes. Honesty, and knowing someone is with you for the right reason, not because it gives them some credit or it gives them an easy ride or they're trying to dip into what you've got going for you. If they're with you for the right reason, I'm pretty perceptive at summing people up, men and women. A lot of things I'm not too perceptive at, but I'm pretty good at that. Yeah. At working out people, and plenty of people I've been with, and men and women, they say, oh, watch out for this person. And I'll say, I just know who that person is, whether it be good or bad, so I'm pretty wary of all that. Yeah, so
No, that
it's
makes
an
sense.
interesting journey, mate. It is an interesting journey. If it was all just plain sailing, it'd be pretty boring.
Very true. You have 3 sons.
Yeah.
2 to your
Yep.
First-
Third wife.
third wife.
Yep.
And then
One from a relationship I had with a woman. Yep.
yes.
Wasn't married to her, but
How did becoming a dad change who you were, or did it not?
yeah. Now, so that's another good question. I was interviewed by John Laws. He used to do a show called Laws, and he'd never met me and heard I was a bit of a fool and a buffoon and all that. And so he flew me up to Sydney and he said, "Do you think you've been a good parent?" And I said, I thought, "Oh, you can say, oh," I said, "No." And he said, he was just waiting for me to give the standard line. And he said, "No." And I said, "Yeah, no." And surely he's going to ask why. And he said, "Why?" And I said, "Well, good on you. You asked why." "Well, because I took it for granted. I didn't spend as much time as I should. I was a bit selfish. I wanted to have my cake and eat it, not just concentrated on my television or the football or whatever, and didn't spend as much time." And I've said that to my sons, all of them, and they said, "No, we didn't think that at the time." I said, "Well, probably because you didn't know it any other way. You thought that's probably how a father acts."
Yeah.
And I know plenty of people who have much better parenting skills than me, but I would not very emotional with my kids, but I'd always absolutely, to the detriment of my life, defend them and support them, but probably by not grasping them and hugging them and kissing them and all that sort of stuff, which is probably a hangover from a bygone era where to show emotion wasn't, considered weak.
Yeah.
But I've changed a hell of a lot.
Do you tell your sons now that you love them?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do when it's appropriate.
Yeah.
At occasions and birthdays, and no, I do.
Yeah.
But I don't ring them up every day and say I love you. But they would know I do. I suppose. Yeah, as long as they know I do. I'm sure they do.
Yeah. How much of the way you parented was a reflection of the way that your mum and dad parented you, or was it different? Different era?
Yes. No, you tailor your life to how you were brought up, and you tend to your habits and your traits come from how you were raised. And my mother and father weren't that emotional either, but they were very, very great supporters of mine, and my sisters are too, but they're not very. That my father wasn't very emotional. He was, but I took it that he. I made him proud of, because he was very keen on the football and very keen on football and very good sportsman himself, and they used to enjoy the success, my mother and father, that I had playing football. So knowing that they were proud of me without actually necessarily them showing it too much gave me great satisfaction.
Amazing. You mentioned your late
Got me
wife.
on the ropes here. I've never been asked any of these questions. I hope some of them are making sense.
No, they're making lots of sense. I appreciate the honesty as well. Your late wife, Amanda.
Yeah.
Are you comfortable sharing with me and our audience that experience of walking in and having to, you performed CPR, I believe?
Yeah. Yep, I did.
What's that like for a man seeing their loved one there and helpless?
Yes. So I took a while to be able to talk about it, but I'm very at ease talking about it. I was down doing something with some friends, and I rang her phone because I thought we'd go out and have something to eat. And but I've said this, so I'm not just saying this to you for the first time, but I said, I said to one of the people I was with, I don't know where she is. She's probably lying dead up in the house somewhere.
Oh.
And so they said goodbye, and I went up, and sure enough, I walked in, and she was lying on the tiles, and I rang 000, and even though my number is blocked, within 2 seconds, 000 knew. So they told me the address, and I said, yep. And they said, we would like you to perform CPR. And I said, well, I'm telling you she's not alive. And they said, please, just keep doing it. So it's a bit disconcerting seeing someone lying there who you were married to, and knowing that she's dead, and pumping her body for half an hour until the medics arrived. And so it's a hell of a shock. It is a hell of a shock. So my life changed. My life changed. I had a different view on life after that. Life or death. I had a different view on existence.
What was that view? How did it change?
Well, there's a hell of a lot of cliches we use in the world which are completely irrelevant and nonsensical, but one of them was, you never know when you may as well live every day to the fullest. I mean, what does that mean? As if you don't live every day to the fullest. So if I was going to change the way I live now, what would I do? Sell up and go and live in the Bahamas? How exciting would that be? So you just get on with life, and eventually you'll meet, you'll get over it, and you'll start to gravitate to people, and I've done that. And but to say that it's not a shock, it's I wouldn't wish it on anyone. It's not as though someone was ill, or they were in palliative care, or they were given some warning. That was a hell of a shock.
Yeah.
But as I say, when you go broke or something else happens, you're resilient. You get over it. You think, well, get yourself together. And time is a great healer, and it has been for me. And so I'm going well on that side of things. Very well.
I'm glad to hear. I can only assume that in those times when you experience something like that, and the grief that comes with it and so forth, you need to rely heavily on friends.
You do? Yep.
How important are friends in your world?
Yes, that's a very good question. You have a lot of acquaintances you meet. You have a lot of friends who are friends until they think you can't do much for them, and they can't exploit your friendship or them being in your company or association. Friends are unconditional. They are people who will defend you behind your back when people speak ill of you. They're your real friends.
What 3 values or legacy do you hope
3
one of your great friends or people that love you say about you when it's all said and done? Couldn't be 2. Let's go 2 or 3.
Well, I was a loyal friend. I think loyalty there's 6 things that you can live your life by: attitude, commitment, discipline, enthusiasm, persistence. But I think loyalty is probably, I'd like to be known as someone who is loyal. And that by definition means that you're honest with your friends, and you don't try and dud people, and you might have some strong opinions and tell them what you think of them. But I saw this. I was asked. I plagiarized this, but I said I plagiarized it. I was asked at the turn of the century, 2000. I was asked, and it's in a book. The person or the company said they were getting quotes from. I was an identity in the 2000s because the Footy Show was up and running. And they said, would you like to give a quote for this book that we're putting out for the change of the century? And I'd seen this a long time ago, and I did say, this is not me, but I think I'd like to be recognised as saying this in the first place. Many things in life catch your eye, but only a few things catch your heart. Pursue those. And if I was buried somewhere and I had a tombstone or a note,
That's what you want on it.
I'd have very small print so that you had to bend over and get down and look at it, and it would say, "Fuck off."
Why?
Well,
why not?
Why not? Who gives a fuck if you're here or not? In a week, no one will ever remember that you were ever on the planet.
To wrap it up, because it's been very insightful and I've thoroughly enjoyed catching up with you. What's the one piece of advice you would give your 16-year-old self that would help you in life moving forward?
Absolutely. Just be yourself. I know that sounds a cliche. 16, well, I was old enough to be myself. I wasn't even, I was at school, so I don't know. Just.
Do you think you at 16 as compared to what, teenagers face now?
Yep.
There's a lot more pressure to not be who you are? Or do you reckon it was the same, it just looked differently?
Yes, if you're feckless or vapid, which means if you're weak.
Yeah, I was going to ask, what does that mean?
If you're weak.
Yes.
If you have an opinion today because you think it's the opinion the people listening to you want you to have, you've given up. You've sold your soul. They can disagree with you and you can be respectful, but if you are just giving out opinions because you think that's what others want to hear, that's when you may as well pack it in. That's what I think. Now, at 16, I wouldn't have known any of that. At 16, I was at school. I wasn't a very good student academically. Never going to assemble any rockets with a view to putting them on the moon. But I loved sport and I was good at that. And so I don't think I'm in an insular environment at a campus. I never left the campus. We were corralled into, if you went up the road into the real life, into the outside world, you got caned. You was flogged to within an inch of your life. How about that today? You'd be put in jail. So I lived a pretty sheltered life. Didn't know much about girls or anything. No, not a lot about girls. But got my eye in after that. I could be fair to say. Yeah. You've just got to be who you are, mate. You've just got to be yourself, and let people, if they gravitate to you, good, and if they just drift away from you because you're not their cup of tea, well,
so be it.
That's so be it.
Or as you said, fuck off. Is that right?
Yeah, fuck off. Yeah.
Well, John, Sam Newman, thank you so much for giving up your time. You very much have been loyal to this day and been very much your own person since I've known of you, and I am a lot younger, but I do thank you for coming on and sharing your experiences across.
If I was going to ask you a question.
Go for it.
If I was doing this, if you were my subject. Now, this is a question that you might take offence to. Why did you accept the Brownlow medal when Jobe Watson was disqualified? Why did you and Sam Mitchell accept the Brownlow medal?
It's a good question. A very good question.
You've been asked it?
Yes.
Yes.
We had Jobe on this show.
Yeah. Did he ask you the question? Why did you accept my medal?
He didn't ask that question
directly.
Directly.
Why didn't he?
Oh, I wish he had have.
Well, I'm asking you. If that was me, I'd say, no way. I didn't win that medal. But I'm glad that you have a Brownlow medal, and so is Sam Mitchell. I would ask the same to Sam Mitchell.
Yeah.
I've always wanted to know why you would do that.
Yeah.
And that's your opinion. My opinion of you is not altered one bit. You're a very fine young man.
Thank you.
You are.
Appreciate that.
You've captained a great club. You're doing great things. I've just always wondered that.
Well, thank you for asking.
What was your answer?
upon reflection, I now know that it is in my control, but felt like it wasn't a decision I got
Yes.
to make. I think it would have been.
So when they said to you,
I think it would have been
not
different
gonna
if there
labour
wasn't
this.
two people.
when they said to you, now, Trent, we're not giving the medal to Joe because he's been caught up in the drug saga. We're going to give it to the second place getters, you and Sam Mitchell. I would have said, really?
I did.
That's not, eh?
That was my conversation.
Yes. And they said, no, you must take it. And you could say, no, I must not take it.
I needed to be stronger in the moment.
Well, I don't know about that. You might have thought, no, you might have thought, fair enough. He's not eligible. Why not? I'm eligible.
Yeah.
It's a moot point.
Yeah, the whole thing is a moot point.
It is. No, it is.
Well, I don't view myself as a Brownlow medalist.
Well, there you are, Trent.
Yes.
Don't you think people would absolutely...
If I won the award, I would have won it on the night.
People would gravitate. They would think, wow. If you said now, you know what, I've thought about this and I was prompted by some clown asking me this question. I actually had never thought about it before, but I just, and I'm going to speak to my friend, Mr. Mitchell, and I think we should I just don't think that's right. You would be amazed. Not that people don't think you're a star, because I think you're a star. Mate, makes no difference. I just think people would think, what a thing to do. Why did I ask you that? That's what I would have asked you if I was doing this interview. I could have asked you a lot of things about your life if I'd been doing this interview.
We can do that whenever you're ready.
You'd probably answer the questions much better than I've answered yours.
No, you've been fantastic. Am I going to come on your show at some stage? Or maybe we'll just sit down and have a chat.
Well, that's all we ever do. That's all this ever is, isn't it? These things just happen to be in the way.
Correct.
If they weren't, we'd be much more circumspect and careful about what we say. But I've never been careful or circumspect of what I've said. That's why these things are informally good.
I like it. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's been an absolute pleasure. And I look forward to our next catch-up.